for you. This is called Mother of the Bride. The central figure in this drama was the mother of the bride, the Motb, not the bride or the groom or the minister, mother. Usually a polite, reasonable, intelligent, and sane human being, Mother was mentally unhinged by the announcement of her daughter's betrothal. And I don't mean she was unhappy, which is so often the case. She was overcome with joy and just about succeeded in overcoming everyone else with her joy. Nobody knew it, but this lady had been waiting with a script for a production that would have met with Cecil B. DeMille's approval. A royal wedding fit for a princess bride. The father of the bride began to pray for an elopement. She had 7 months to work, and no detail was left to chance or human error. Everything that could be engraved was engraved. There were teas and showers and dinners. There was an 18-piece brass and wind ensemble engaged. The bride and groom met with the minister only 3 times. The Motb was in his office more often than the cleaning lady. Not only were the bridesmaids' outfits made to order, but the tuxedos for the groom and his men were bought. Not rented, mind you, bought. And if all that wasn't enough, the engagement ring was returned to the jeweler for a larger stone, quietly subsidized by the Motb. When I say the lady came unhinged, I mean unhinged. The final hour came. Guests in formal attire packed the church. Enough candles were lit to bring daylight back to the evening, and in the choir loft, an orchestra gushed great music. And the mighty Motb coasted down the aisle with the grandeur of an opera diva at her premiere performance. Never did the mother of the bride take her seat with more satisfaction. She had done it. She glowed, beamed, smiled, and sighed. The music softened, and 9, count them, 9, chiffon-draped bridesmaids lockstep down the long aisle, while the grooms and his men marched into place. Finally, the wedding march thundered from the orchestra. Here Comes the Bride, preceded by 4 enthusiastic mini princesses chucking flower petals and 2 munchkin ring bearers, 1 for each ring. The congregation rose and turned in anticipation. Ah, the bride. She had been dressed for hours, if not days. No adrenaline left in her body. Left alone with her father in the reception hall of the church while the march of the maidens went on and on and on, she had walked along the table loaded with the gourmet goodies and absent-mindedly sampled first the little pink and yellow and green mints, and then she picked up the silver bowls of mixed nuts and just picked out the pecans, followed by a cheese ball or 2 and some black olives, a handful of glazed almonds, a little sausage with a frilly toothpick stuck in it, and a couple of shrimps blanketed in bacon, and a crackled pile of liver pate to wash it down, a drink of pink champagne. Her father gave it to her to calm her nerves. What you noticed as the bride stood in the doorway was not her dress, but her face, white. For what was coming down the aisle was a living grenade with the pin pulled out. The bride threw up. Just as she walked by her mother. And by threw up, I don't mean a polite little dainty herb in her handkerchief. She puked. There's no other nice word for it. I mean, she hosed the front of the chapel, hitting 2 bridesmaids, the groom, a ring bearer, and the minister. I'm quite sure of the details. We have it all on videotape. 3 cameras worth. The Motb had thought of everything. Having disgorged her hors d'oeuvre, champagne, and the last of her dignity, the bride went limp into her father's arms, while her groom sat down on the floor where he had been standing, too stunned to function. And the mother of the bride moaned, slumped over, and passed out cold. There was a fire drill then, and in that at front of the church that only the Marx brothers could have topped. Groomsmen rushed about hysterically, mini princesses, flower girls squealed, and bridesmaids sobbed, and peoples were weak-stomach headed for the exits, and only 2 people were seen smiling. One was the mother of the groom. The other was the father of the bride. The bride was consoled and cleaned up, fitted with one of the bridesmaids' dresses, and hugged and kissed a lot by the groom. She says she'll always love him for that. When he said, for better or worse, he meant it. Everyone cried, as people are supposed to at weddings, mostly because the groom held the bride in his arms throughout the whole ceremony, and no groom had ever kissed a bride more tenderly than he. If one can hope for a wedding that it be memorable, then theirs was a raging success. Nobody who was there will ever forget it. They lived happily ever after, as anyone does, and happier than most, in fact. And they've been married now about 12 years, and they have 3 lively children. But that's not the end of the story. On the 10th anniversary of this disastrous affair, a party was held. A feast was laid, and best friends were invited, and 3 TV sets were mustered. Remember, there were 3 video cameras at the scene of the accident. All 3 tapes were shown at once. The effect was pretty interesting, especially when they're running commentary and the stop action stuff with the little gross when it seemed 1 frame at a time. But the part that got the cheers and the toast was when the camera focused on the grin of the father of the bride, who contemplated his wife being revived. I really like this part of the story, not because of the party, but because of who organized it. Of course, the infamous Motb, the mother of the bride, is still at it, but she's a lot looser these days. She not only forgave her husband and everyone else for their part in the debacle, she forgave herself. Nobody laughed harder at the videotape than she. There's a word for what she has: grace. And that's why her daughter loves her still. Kathy, remember to have fun this Saturday at your daughter's wedding. Lots of love and congratulations, Maureen and Tim, and of course, to you.